Hello and welcome back to episode 26 of the Epoch podcast. I do not have my normal host with me. He is lurking in Twitch chat instead of being on the podcast, but he's off in the world of Path of Exile for now. So he'll be joining us once again next week when we keep talking about Last Epoch stuff here. So for now, I've got two very special guests with me. So first of all is Flintler. Flintler, welcome back.
Thank you. Hello.
And we also have Bina. And Bina, I believe it's your first time on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Ooh, I'm excited.
Yep.
So the topic of conversation today, broadly speaking, we'll be talking about experimental builds and a couple other things that go into how to experiment, whether those things go well, whether those things go poorly. We're going to touch on some experiments that both of you did recently, but I want to give you also a chance to introduce yourself in case there's someone out there who doesn't know who you are. So Flintler, I know you've been on the podcast before, but I want to give Bina a chance to get his thoughts in line. So Flintler, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've done in the game, and in a huge post that you made that hopefully gains traction very soon.
My name's Flintler, and I like to play, off-meta builds. You could call me a bit of a hipster because I don't really like playing the things that everyone else is touting as the best thing in the game, right? So I'm a primalist main. I like shaman a lot, and what you're referring to is I finally made a thread on Tempest Strike, detailing what I think sucks about it and what I think should be done to help improve mostly the feel of the skill. The performance of it could be here or there, but the feel of it is just really bad, and I think that should be addressed.
Can't wait to talk to you more about that in just a few minutes here. But Bina, how about you? So you haven't been on the podcast before. Who are you? What do you do? Do you stream, for example? What are you up to?
So I'm Bina. I've been streaming since the start of COVID, pretty much. Started with Wilson a little bit. Had like some pretty good success over there when all the big streamers went away from the game. So I was pretty much the only one streaming Wilson still at the time. So I've managed to pull up like a couple of nice builds in Wilson and pretty much shaped up the meta. And then when I got enough of Wilson, because we all know anyways, we're not going to talk about this right here. But Last Epoch pulled me in after Wilson, and I've had a great time in Last Epoch as well. I enjoy pushing ladders, so I can't wait for the leaderboard to come back. I've pushed rank 1 with Earthquake Werebear back before it was reworked. And I also enjoy like pulling off like kind of questioning the meta, questioning what is already established in the game, and how you can basically manage to reshape the meta into something else by discovering new interactions or new builds and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much. And I'm pretty much known for playing Ballista quite a bit.
For the past week or so, you've been known for playing Ballista, but you made some pretty interesting videos about that too.
Yeah,
so
but I played Ballista back then as well. So
okay,
maybe like a year back. And
oh, you know what? Now that you say that, you were playing like an ethical Ballista build.
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
You put down the Ballista, it shoots arrows for you. Yeah, totally ethical back then.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
I mean, that would still be pretty good in arena these days with like really good gear.
And all of a sudden, we have like a slightly different way of scaling Ballista. So I guess we can use this as a segue to talk about like the experiments that y'all have been doing recently. My own builds, I'll give a segue for my own builds, like what I've been doing recently. So I was working on a two-handed Rive character, and I caught wind of another person who is using two-handed Rive in a different way. So I've been like using their YouTube video as a way to make my own video or my own build better, trying to make some tweaks on it, and like trying to figure out exactly how much offense and exactly how much defense I want. And, like that's been fun, but it's like an established build, and Rive, the nodes that are most exciting to me, they look pretty self-explanatory. It's like you take a two-handed weapon and then you double it. And you take all your echoes and then you double it. So what if you just take both of those things? You double everything. So that's the build that I've been working on. And like it's not as gigabrain as it might look to a brand new player. But let's talk about the builds that you two have been working on recently. I know one of them turned out very, very well. And Flintler, I just can't wait to talk about ones that don't turn out very well. But Bina, let's start out with you. You saw a node that gave, more damage per dexterity? What exactly did it say?
Yeah, so actually, I was not trying to do a big boom ballista build at first. So I was really just trying to remake the old ballista, the kind of like the basic arrow shooting ballista build, and scale dexterity like crazy. Because I pretty much calculated this is going to be probably maybe another topic for the podcast as well. But like the spreadsheet that Zeker made, I kind of Frankensteined it and like made it my own. So I calculated that I could do over 250k crits on the dummy with each arrow, and they would each have like all the ballistas, which we get 5 or 6, can get a ton of attack speed as well. So imagine 6 ballistas dealing 250k crits on the dummy. How crazy that could be potentially in arena, and sustaining those. So I tried going for that at first, but then someone in chat mentioned to me, I believe it was Krishan, uh, hey, did you try the explosive node and whatever? I'm just like, I saw Trickster maybe a couple months back trying it out and like making a build video about it. But the conclusion was that it was not really that great, especially for bossing and stuff like that. So single target, it had good clear, but not that great single target. So I just spec'd into it, and right away, the first time I spec'd into it, I put my first tripwire, the whole screen blew up, and I was like, hey, this is something else. This
We
is
don't
really,
really
really
have
something
stuff
else.
like that literally blows up the entire screen in Last Epoch. It's pretty good.
Yeah, and like the potential, like my AoE can go up twice as high and damage as well. So it's just there's so much potential there. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like you
Man,
could
there's
potentially do three screens of full AoE with the ballistas.
and here I am playing Writhe, killing like one monster at a time. Cool. All right, good.
Yeah, it
So
seems
tell me the boss damage. The boss damage is mediocre, right?
no, actually the
Damn
boss
it.
damage is pretty good. Like for example, that build scales so well because it scales with dexterity. So every point of dexterity will give you a more multiplier for your damage and a more multiplier for your area. And that just scales with every single point of dexterity. As you get better gear, like with like great gear, end game gear, afterwards every single point of dexterity you get after that. So with great gear I mean like tier 5 tier 6 dexterity everywhere pretty much. Every single other point of dexterity you add will get you at least 1% more damage to your build. So every single new item that you get, like tier 7 dexterity at places, or like some items will give you like all stats. So every point of stats that you get scales your damage just like crazy, absolutely like crazy. So it feels good to gear. Um, it feels really good to gear. It feels good to get upgrades because you can see the AoE become bigger and the numbers becoming bigger as well. And the single target damage is really like I'd say it's like B tier maybe, A or B tier. It's pretty good actually.
I like
And
the
of
sound of
course,
that.
as we know, the AoE is just absolutely crazy. Like anything under 300 corruption, you just blow up with one single blast. So yeah, it feels great to farm with.
But
What's the
doesn't
max?
it feel bad? Like you have to walk backward to pick up the exalted items that drop the screen behind you. Like that. Like something's got to feel bad about this build, right?
The
Oh well,
setup,
yeah.
right? The setup.
No, setup's good, but the one thing that feels bad is that you're pretty squishy. So for that build, I went with Blade Dancer because for example, I didn't want to shoot arrows. So the marksman will deal more damage, but the Blade Dancer gets his damage right off the bat. You don't need to do anything finicky. You don't need to shoot your arrows, shoot your bow. Like there's no setup required. You just put down 2 ballistas and they explode, right? Um, so yeah, that's the reason why I went Blade Dancer. But even though we're Blade Dancer and we get access to a little bit more tankiness, we're really, really squishy. Um, I haven't figured out a way to like improve upon that. Maybe using Core of the Mountain to get like a like 3-second immunity just for the time that you can set up 2 more ballistas or maybe 4 more ballistas to get like 1 or 2 more hits and get immunity in that time.
Just hoping that 3 more seconds buys you enough time.
Yeah, because
I'm so
basically
happy that someone has said those words to me. What a great. All right.
I mean, you just need like 1 or 2 hits, right, to clear the entire screen. So, but yeah, you're really squishy. It's very much a rogue build. So you're not as tanky as some other classes, except for example, if you're using if you're on the Blade Dancer and playing Umbral Blades with like Bastion and like stacking all of the less damage modifiers that you can. Yeah.
So
When you
I
get
want to
your
use this as a
recovery
way to like talk about itemization in Bina's builds, because like you got to believe me, I got like a whole list of things that we got to talk about today, and it's just a matter of like putting them in the right order. But Bina, you were already talking about like min-maxing your build and putting like dexterity on your items, and like every single upgrade felt relevant to you. And whenever I look at your YouTube videos or I look at the build planners that you ship to me, it always stands out that you really put a lot of effort into the min-max version of your build. Like you're not worrying about like exalted items, you're worried about like 2 and 3 LP items. It's like how are you finding the right LP items, or like the right weird low level uniques to include in your build?
Well, for Ballista, I've already found it because I played that build like a year ago, right? So I basically played that build before LP was introduced, and now that I came back to the game, I was like, okay, what can we do to improve upon it? And for example, like things like Jungle Queens, like it was really good back then. It's even better with LP. Things like You Are Thrin Stand, like the bow is really good because it goes so well with the Morning Frost boots. So the physical and cold res that you get on your bow mitigates a lot of the downsides of using the Morning Frost boots. But in terms of damage, back like a year ago, I was using a Dread Thorns bow because it had more crit multiplier and like 1% more base crit chance. So it had a 4% base crit instead of 3, and had up to 61% bow crit multiplier, which also applies to your ballistas. But yeah, for just I think the LP system is such a great system in LE, and I like to put so my planners, as you said, I like to min max my planners a little bit more than maybe other people tend to do, because I like having someone to something to look forward to. Um, I really like something that really attracts me in ARPG is like the process of becoming strong and stronger rather than being OP right off the bat. So if you're OP right off the bat, it kind of gets boring really fast. What is appealing to me is like trying to get to that point where you feel OP, but like never actually reaching it, so that you're always striving to look like to get that extra piece of gear, that extra LP, or like get that extra item, or like tier 7, or like yeah, stuff like that. So that's the main reason why my planners tend to be things that you might very well not achieve, but that's the entire plan. Like you don't want to reach that. You never want to reach your goal, because once you reach your goal, then you kind of get bored of like whatever you're playing, or like yeah. Yeah,
Flintler, I see the smile
that's
on your
my
face,
philosophy.
and I feel like you're chomping at the bit. What is on your mind?
I also put aspirational planners in, but I was laughing because instead of getting to that point, I say, "Oh, I'm 80% there. Let's try another idea."
Like I get it. Like if I fix this thing, my damage will be
These
better.
numbers
If I fix this thing, I'll be
better. This will
tankier.
be a little
Okay,
better.
boring. Yeah. Like the end isn't reach. Why bother getting there? I want to say, Bina, whenever I see your planners, like this is specifically coming to mind because you put a lot of work in on the lightning bug build as well. And I feel like I've seen a handful of planners from you at this point that all have this one unique item in it. And like whenever I see this unique item, I think about you. I don't know if you know that, but I think about you. Every time I see a hazel root, the thing that on physical skill use, it like spawn or has a chance to spawn a thorn shield around you.
Yep.
Bina's voice is in the back of my head. He's like, you can cap your armor with that. Like, do you really need more damage? You could have that with 3 LP on it. You could have damage and capped armor. Like, what about it?
So I'm pretty much always thinking about defense first. Like, well, not always, like most of the time, because I like pushing arena. And in arena, if you're too squishy, you get to a point where you get one shot by any small mobs, like just a regular mob. So as we know, last Epoch is pretty much like the general consensus is that it's an EHP meta. It's you need to be tanky. If you're not dying, you're actually winning because you're not losing your rewards. And yeah, basically staying alive is like one of the most important things in ARPGs nowadays.
In the past, not so much, but like nowadays.
Yeah, nowadays. So yeah, what I like to say is that if you're not dying, then you're winning. And I die a lot, so. But yeah, so I think about Arena first because that's the only ladder that we had back before multiplayer released, and now that multiplayer is released, we're looking forward to getting our leaderboard back. And who knows, maybe they'll add some more types of leaderboards as well. Um, but yeah, that's why Hazelroot. I mean, on the Swarm Blade, you attack so fast with that 17% chance to get that shield. You can cap your armor on top of capping your dodge, on top of being super tanky, being a druid, having so many defense layers. Um, yeah, so that's why that's very appealing to me. And I wanted to go back to make another Swarm Blade build, but I've played the Lightning Bug so much that I kind of want to explore other archetypes as well. But I do have some ideas with Hazelroot and maybe like a Poison Bug. I mean, I've talked to a couple people.
As soon as the ladder comes back, or maybe even the corruption ladder that they've hinted at once or twice, you'll have more reasons to experiment there.
Absolutely.
Flintler,
And I've talked, so a lot of people have also given me their ideas, and yeah, I do think it has a lot of potential.
I hear you. Flintler, I'm going to swap over to you. There's an experimental build that is not quite ballista. It's not blowing up the entire screen the whole time, but I want to allow you to have a little bit of room to tell the story of what you've been working on over the past few weeks.
Sure. So I've been trying to, there's two things that I was working on. One was, how do I make Avalanche work as a shaman? Is there a reason to play shaman? And one of those is, is Storm Totem or Avalanche. Storm Totem's fine, but is Avalanche worth playing? I haven't got to a satisfying resolution on that. Besides, yes, it can pop your totems with idols. But after that decided I need to finally provide feedback on Tempest Strike instead of just ranting on it. So I thought, okay, I've tried Tempest Strike on Shaman before. What's different? What can I think about differently this time? How can I approach it differently that might give a different result? Spoiler, end result is only slightly different.
So you tried Tempest Strike with different spell procs. You tried it with like different amounts of like crit chance, crit multi. You tried like using different weapons for it, and you were pushing, 1-200 corruption.
Yeah, I was able to run. I pushed from 100 to 200 on with that character, and then depending on if you got too many defensive mods, then 200 corruption was too much for the gear level I had, and so that's about a level that I wouldn't recommend trying to play Tempest Strike beyond. But the main interesting thing I thought was Beastmaster is what I was playing on instead of Shaman, and with how Tempest Strike scales with attack speed, converting it to penetration. You've got 50% attack speed from the aspect of the Viper nodes. You've got up to 88% attack speed from aspect of the Shark stacks, which Tempest Strike is able to hold on bosses. And then you've got aspect of the links providing you a whole bunch of crit chance, 120% crit multiplier. You've got Frenzy Totem for more attack speed and 90% crit multiplier. All these things that apply to Tempest Strike scaling that Shaman just doesn't have access to. So that was kind of the novel angle of can I try anything different with Tempest Strike, and then try to scale consistency by using all three elements. I eventually settled on just lightning and earth feeling better, but that was kind of the process of, can I approach this from a different angle? What haven't I tried? What haven't I heard people try? Is there anything here that can scale me differently?
So were you just like throwing things at the wall at that point and like trying everything you could think of, or was there like a methodology for like picking which avenue you wanted to explore?
Staring at a planner. That's the method.
Got it.
What can there be done? What is there?
I mean, if only Tempest Strike had like some unique mechanic to, like, it has a unique mechanic, but if only it had a good like play style mechanic to it that rewarded you for investing a lot, and maybe it only works if you have like full T7 everywhere and LP items and like crazy gear, and then like once you reach that point, that then you're completely destroying the game. It would feel good, but it's just not the case.
I would argue it would not. Even if you clicked the button once and it killed the whole screen, it still would feel clunky. Just with how
isn't that what Summon Abomination does though? Like you click once, it blows up the whole screen, and people still don't like it because it's kind of clunky.
Do you think negative QOL deserves power?
I don't feel that way, but I know other people feel that way. So I want your characters to feel fun by the time that you fully invest into them and you're popping off, blowing up the entire screen. Like throwing a ballista and having a huge explosion that makes you want to put your sunglasses on, that's pretty fun. But like Tempest Strike, not scaling with attack speed, still kind of feeling the same clunkiness as it does at level 25. Like, maybe not. I hear you. I hear you. So there's another reason that I brought both of you in particular here. And Bina, you alluded to it for just a moment, a couple of minutes ago. And that is, well, we have a chat command that specifically alludes to it, but it's the fact that both of you use spreadsheets.
Yeah.
And when it comes to an action RPG, if you're really trying to min-max your character, at some point you got to pop open Excel, you got to pop open a Google Doc and figure out where your damage is and where it could be coming from instead. What kind of prefixes do you want? What base type do you want? How much attack speed do you need? So we have somebody who unfortunately could not be here, but Zeker, in case you know him, Zeker is Bay. He has a public spreadsheet that he's been putting out, trying to popularize, and he's been working a long time on trying to get like, it almost feels like the very first prototype of like path of building. Like it's the very first beginning of trying to calculate exactly how much damage you're dealing and helping you decide where your items could help you get more damage instead. So I know I don't really use spreadsheets. I just kind of go by feel, and I'm probably punished by that because my builds are not as good. But I know both of you do. So I want to hear your perspective. And I guess, let's start with you because I know that you have like a customized version of Zeker spreadsheets that you've been using recently. Tell me about spreadsheets and how you've been using them on your characters.
So Perry, don't you wonder what is better between tier 7 crit multi or tier 7 flat damage on your weapon?
But I don't have tier
What is better between the two? How do you know?
Well, my items are only so good, so I use the one that's better.
We should consolidate to a single damage stat. I think just a pure DPS stat would make things a lot easier to understand.
It's like DPS yes or DPS no. I mean, if I could do that, then I would really understand things.
Why don't we just like look at a green arrow? Green arrow up, good.
Moving on. Man, I know we have some people here live in chat, but I really hope crit stays the way that it is right now. I would really appreciate if crit continues to have base crit and then also percent increase crit. I know it's like slightly confusing, but understanding how the game works is part of the fun of the game.
Yeah, so for example, I use Zeker's spreadsheet and I pretty much modified it to my own. So his spreadsheet is spread between multiple pages on his Google Doc, and so I kind of made like a custom UI for like only on one page I input all of my stats for every single piece of gear that I have with idols and passives. I made kind of like a little grid for my passives, grids for my skills, and I can change things around. And I have the option to compare one option with another and see, okay, if I do this, I put this point here and that point there, then I gain, for example, 5% DPS. And if I remove this and put this elsewhere, maybe I lose 5% DPS, but maybe I thought I would have like not lose that much or maybe not gain that much. So it kind of like, it's really easy once you have it all set up. It takes quite a while to set up, but once you have it all set up, it's quite easy to know where to go with your points and what is the absolute min-max way of building for your character, basically. And I really like I don't like spreading misinformation, and I don't like utilizing not bad information, but for example, if I have a specific goal in mind, I really like trying to get the best items possible, right, that I can for my build. And I want to know, it's really important for me to know if crit multi is better than flat damage, or if it's better than like having this here or that there, or which stats goes where on what piece of gear. And especially for LP, legendary potential completely like it's as I think it's one of the like best point for LE is the crafting system and legendary potential, and what it opens up in terms of builds and ideas and like potential for items, basically.
So how about an example? I need something like concrete that I can think about. Like what's something that its spreadsheets taught you about like one of your builds where it's like, wow, like this thing that I hadn't thought about really is the best for my build.
Maybe not that, but like for example, Ballista. I know exactly if I get all the gear that I want, I will absolutely destroy the game with so not big boom ballista, not the explosive ballista, but just the regular ballista. I know that if you get tier 7 dexterity at all the places that you want it, you'll do over 250k crits with every single arrow. And that would absolutely melt mobs in arena up until like way above 1000 waves, I believe. Uh, Back in the days, I was dealing maybe 30 or 40k crits on the dummy, and I pushed over 500 waves in arena while being pretty squishy, right? And we didn't have LP. Yeah, we like it was like a completely other version of last Epoch that we have right now.
I remember
So
500 waves in the past would have been like 800 waves, like 900 waves right now, right?
no, I believe it was the same scaling. It was
It
after
was
the
okay.
scaling rework. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so basically the spreadsheet enables me to know, okay, will this be good? Well, like if I fully invest in this, is it worth it? Is it not worth it? Um yeah, so that's why I like to use it basically.
Nice. And then
For me,
Flintler, yeah, go ahead.
It's again the crit argument of, particularly if I don't have good access to base crit, is it worth the investment? And surprisingly, compared to like just getting more increased damage in a lot of places, you can get a lot of increased damage, especially on like a staff. If you're using a staff, you're obviously you don't have a catalyst for spell crit, and you maybe don't have a prismatic gaze, things like that. Just getting a whole bunch of increased damage might make up for it, and like even a singularity. If you can't get with no crit multi, unless you're getting like 25% or higher crit chance, you're not getting anything out of crit compared to singularity, is basically how that works out. And the one instance I have where it's like, oh my goodness, I really shouldn't be focusing my build this way is with Avalanche. It's got a note in it that when you crit, it produces an extra boulder, right? Crit, but you don't necessarily want a whole bunch of crit multi when you could scale a whole bunch of increased damage because the additional boulders can't crit. So with a build like that where you're hoping to drop 1 or 2 boulders that will crit and get most of your damage from a whole bunch of additional boulders that can't crit, you'd rather build increased damage. And so that's something
The additional boulders can't crit?
Yeah, it sucks.
What?
They could have just made so the additional boulders can't make additional boulders, but no. Shaman doesn't get singular nerfs. Shaman gets double nerfs.
Weird.
So you got to build like 100%
actually kind of
crit,
like it.
and then
One of the things that I wish Last
it.
Epoch had more of would like, support for non-crit builds or support for builds like have crit chance but not crit multi. Because like in Path of Exile, for example, I really liked Elemental Overload. But that's kind of like Elemental Overload, isn't it? Like you build crit chance, you want the crit chance. Avalanche like makes another boulder after that. I kind of like it. I wish the skill was better, but I kind of like that part of it. Had no idea that note existed.
Yeah, so the spreadsheet, I put in the little extra numbers for, okay, well, here's the damage of the main Avalanche, and here's the damage of the additional boulders, looking at a single target scenario. And well, actually, building more increased helps me more in that case than building crit multi.
So I was going to ask you about the Tempest Strike build, but I'm surprised you brought up the Avalanche thing so quickly. Tempest Strike, one of the things that really stands out to me about it is the affixes for it look absolutely insane, where it's like plus 72 adaptive damage for Tempest Strike. And if you put that on any other skill in the game, it just like cracks it in half. Like
Yeah,
how do you say what?
Yeah, because any other skill you can hit more than once a second, and any other skill you have added damage effectiveness.
I feel like Tempest Strike must be negative or something. But like how did you decide? Like what was it about Tempest Strike? Like in your spreadsheets when you were like working on it, trying to make it as good as possible, was there a moment that stood out to you? Like, hey, I should be building this adaptive damage. Hey, I should be building like crit multi instead. What were you working on?
I should have used the spreadsheet more than I did on it. However, the main thing I was looking at is Beastmaster gave me so much access to crit multi that I was focusing on crit chance, right? On the gear, I need the crit chance to take advantage of all the crit multi, like 210% you get from Beastmaster, right? Aspect of the links is 120 and 90 from Frenzy Totem. So I needed to get the spell crit chance on my amulet, I need the rune dagger to get access to base crit, things like that. And then you also don't have to worry, like you said, that helm affix that gets you a massive amount of flat makes so you don't care quite as much about not using a staff. So, okay, you can use a katana in your offhand, crit multiplier, and you can get spellblade prefix on it for flat damage. I've got a 30 flat spell damage on a katana. Great. And so you end up with roughly, depending on what tier of the Helm affix you have, a little less than or a little more than base damage a staff would have had anyway. But then you get all the attack speed that you can get on the dagger, on the katana that you can't get on a staff, and then you get all the crit bonuses, base crit, and crit multipliers. So it's weighing the, do I really want only flat, or do I get all these other things? And
I'm trying to think of like the last time that I did something like this. Like it really doesn't come to mind. I know like the kinds of gear that I'm looking for. I'm looking for like the prefixes and suffixes. So I'm thinking about this axe that I'm looking for right now for this Rive character that I'm playing on stream. And like I know, which of the affixes I want to be exalted. I know that I need attack speed on it to make it feel nice and good. I know which suffixes I need. And like, I don't know, man. I wonder how much benefit I would get from like using a spreadsheet for it. Because go ahead.
Yeah, so for example, Perry, in your passive points, it's pretty important. Do you know how much 8% for example, if you go back to the lightning bug, the 8% penetration in the shaman tree, how much is this better than in the regular primalist tree, the 6 nodes that give you 7% increased spell damage per point?
That's an excellent question. I have no idea. I assume that the penetration's better because like the penetration, you have like penetration well transformed, you have the attunement penetration in the shaman tree, then you have shred. You're really not getting much more penetration than that.
But
unless you use a spreadsheet, it depends.
Yeah, exactly. So the 6 points in the Wisdom of the Wild that gives 7% increased spell damage per point. I think, like, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it gave me something like 8% more damage on my total DPS. 8% more.
Rather than penetration node? Doesn't that just mean that you don't have enough like percent increased damage elsewhere in your build?
Yes.
But we don't have a lot on that one, right?
So the Rive character that I'm playing right now, I was looking at it because we were talking about Sigils of Hope, because I'm currently not spec'd into Sigils of Hope. I don't have any points in the Paladin skill tree. And I was thinking, I could have 160% increased damage if I spec'd into Sigils of Hope as well. And my percent increased damage is actually really low. Like if I could get, exalted physical damage somewhere, exalted melee damage somewhere, it really would be good for the character. So I just swapped over from like doing void damage to doing physical damage instead. And if you're doing void damage on a void knight, then you get to use all those affixes, like void damage if a skill echoed recently, void melee damage, and you have a lot of access to percent increased damage. But all of a sudden, over the past day or so, I swapped over to dealing physical damage. I've got like none. I've got like 100% increased damage, and I could have way more. So I'm currently in the process of trying to figure out how I can get more of that in the build.
Yeah, I think for affixes like this, for me, what helps me the most about a spreadsheet is especially going between crit multi when you're stacking quite a bit of crit multi, and increased, for example, in certain builds. Of course, in the builds where you get like above 1,000 increased damage, like pretty much a crit multi is always the best option. But in certain specific situations, for example, with like experimental builds, maybe you want to know exactly what is the better affix for your build, actually. Especially in the passive tree, is it better to get 40 health, or should I get maybe like 8% more damage in my build?
It depends if I fear death or not. But have you played Path of Exile in the past?
Not really. No.
Not really. I remember. So I've been playing Last Epoch for about 3 years at this point. But I remember when I first made the transition over to Last Epoch from like being full-time Path of Exile all the time. Previous to that, one of the first things that really stood out to me is like you don't get percent increased damage for free everywhere. Like in Path of Exile, you have a ton of access to percent increased damage. You can get on your I haven't played in a while, so my PoE brain's not working, but like even just like a wand prefix is like a couple of 100% increased damage, and you get it all over the place. And when I came over to Last Epoch instead, my PoE brain was telling me like, okay, avoid getting percent increased damage because you probably have enough of it already. Because that's a pretty reasonable rule of thumb if you're working in Path of Exile. And like that's just not the case in Last Epoch. Like you could very easily be at a point where you don't have enough of the damage that you're looking for.
Yeah.
Can we quickly talk about skill balance and passive balance?
I would love to talk about skill balance.
Because some builds get it for free. Some builds just absolutely get 1,000% increase for free.
Some skills scale with everything, right?
I'm
melee,
thinking about
throwing, like
so skills to get things for free. Spirit Plague is one that stands out to me because it used to have like, you know, nearly unlimited scaling for how much % increased damage you can get. And I actually don't like how it was nerfed because it was nerfed in kind of a weird way. So Spirit Plague, like it spreads between enemies, and like every time you cast it directly, you get % increased damage. But also every time it spreads, you also get % increased damage. So instead of just making it only give you the % increased damage when you directly cast it, which means that it scales on cast speed, instead they just made it to like even the spreads still count, but they capped it like 13. Like that kind of thing. I think they nerfed it in the wrong way, but like that's my example in my head about like where a skill gets a bunch of % increased damage for free.
I think the worst offender is Werebear form. Gets crit capped for free for Maul and Rampage. Absolutely. If you put a Spriggan following you and you get 20% 20 base crit from the tree and 200% increase from the tree, you get Warcry, you're capped. You don't.
Why does Swarmblade form get plus 10 base crit? I love it. I wouldn't ever leave home without it. But why? It's so good.
I think that the part that I don't like about it is that it means you don't have to care about your gear as much. And in an ARPG like this, where building character power coming from gear feels really good, especially LP system, you just reduce the amount of chase that the build has.
Counterpoint.
Okay, you get it all for free. It's all
hold on. You get 10 base crit. So we're talking specifically about the lightning bug build. It's okay. like lightning, tornado, Swarmblade. You get the 10 base crit from your Swarmblade skill tree. And instead of making it where your gear doesn't matter, to me, it feels like one of the most flexible, creative builds that there is, because you can do the meteor thing if you want to. You can do a movement speed thing. You can dual wield. You can use like wands. You can use, you know, a deicide sword to have extra movement speed. You can go tanky as possible with a hazel root. Like there's a lot of creativity in expressing how you want to make that build feel for you. And like the core of the build is great. Like it's got good damage. You can go full tank. You can go full tank with like no damage anywhere. And like you'll kill monsters. You'll be slow. But like that's your version of the build and you can own up to it. Like I almost want more of that. I want more things that are like taken care of so that I can flex.
So there's a line between leading you and how you could build your character. Here's this for free, and if you really play into it, it's easier, versus over too strong of a hand giving you everything you need, like Serpent Strike giving you cap dodge for
Serpent Strike giving you cap dodge for free probably should not exist. Yeah, literally zero investment into it. Almost literally no investment into it. But like you get more dodge and flat dodge, and then you craft % dodge on a piece of gear, and like you're already 80% dodge chance. Like how does a rogue get that? Rogue's supposed to build dodge or something, but like that never happens.
So I think the dodge, like it's a problem with the node. It should not be multiplicative with like your total that you just like. It should be like additive multiplicative and not like multi, if you get what I mean. So now, like, I don't know how much multi it is, but if, for example, say if it's like 7% multi, you get 7% more dodge, and then on that total dodge, you get 7% more, and 7% more, and 7% more. Instead, it should be like you get like maybe 7%, 14, 21, 28. It should be additive, like, and just so you would not be able to get to those stupid amounts. You would not be able to get to like maximum dodge with basically zero investment except whatever dodge you get on your Maelstrom and whatever dodge you get from your Spriggan.
So like whenever we talk about like dodge and armor stuff, it's like dodge values on your gear are very low, and raw armor values on your gear are also quite low. Like you can talk about tier 6 or tier 7, but like are you really crafting like tier 7 armor? And you could, like it's better, but the tier 5 values are just not worth crafting because they're so small. So anytime that your build gets flat armor or gets flat dodge in your build, all of a sudden the value of getting a little bit of extra % increase skyrockets. And like, man, I'm going to bring up something that Flintler introduced me to like 2 years ago. And that is the healing effect stuff. Like, I know it's like, it's kind of a tangent to the dodge stuff, but it reminds me of one of the first things that I really loved about Primalist is like, you get this flat healing from your Warcry and from your Maelstrom, and just like a little bit of healing, and you build some healing effect on your gear, and it feels great. And like that kind of thing as like a pseudo replacement, and like it's not even strictly worse than Leech because you can have it at range too, feels very rewarding. It's like having those little small values there. I just wish that weren't the only way that you could build dodge in the game. Like I want like more flat dodge so that I could, if I wanted to, play a dodge-based mage, for example.
But would you play a dodge-based build? Like completely dodge-based? Because if you get hit, then you're just dead, right? You only so dodge is like that kind of like damage mitigation stat that you want as your last like maybe not last resort, but it's like it's kind of like your last layer of defense, right? Because
Mhm.
if you do get hit, then you take the full damage. So it's I don't know. I don't think I think block even block I don't think should be able to get to 100%. You should like block should be an extra layer of defense. So you're tankier most of the time, but not all the time. So it's things like Bastion. I mean, Bastion has the range thing and all that stuff. It just got nerfed to like 4 meters. But even then, I don't think block should be 100%. I think block is OP. If you like dodge, block should be kind of like dodge, like capped at maybe 85%, and then there are some times
Severe
where
diminishing returns after 80.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't mind it. Okay.
there are times where you will get hit, for example.
I don't necessarily agree. I just think that the values that we get from block effectiveness are probably too high, and I think that getting to 100% should not be easy.
Well,
Regardless.
so I had the shield in my inventory on softcore right now, and it's a Bulwark of the Last Abyss, which has block chance on it, and it's also an iron glass shield. And if you get LP on it, you can put more block chance. And like that thing by itself puts you at like 70 block chance. It's disgusting. And like pushing that 70, getting like exalted block on your rings, exalted block on your gloves, maybe using Sigils of Hope for some extra block, it feels really, really rewarding to crank up that block chance. Or you could just use a Bastion.
Is that what this discussion is going to be?
I love making fun of Bastion of Honour. Let's do it every single podcast.
Final answer: easy block should not be strong block. I think Bastion should cap effectiveness.
Perry, what do you think about the nerf to Bastion? Is it enough? Is it not enough?
Oh, I don't think it's enough. No.
I think it's the wrong direction.
It's incredibly rare, and that's made it pain in the ass for me. But Bastion turns the block effect formula from like a good formula to absolutely insane. Like, so the issue is, I don't know if it's 44 or 46. I have to look it up again, but it's one of those two numbers. If you have a well-rolled Bastion with the implicit, which goes up to 800, which is way too high, so you could nerf it by putting on a worse base. The Bastion implicit, a good one, along with a well-rolled Blessing from Heorot, the Age of Winter, puts you at like 44, 46% damage reduction. And like that is way too high damage reduction against, you know, the scary monsters that actually get to you for so low investment. And like, yeah, if you're going to have a shield that has 100% block chance, that's going to turn the block effect formula on its head. Like I don't like it. I don't think it's a good enough nerf. I'd almost rather have like the normal range. I think kind of like the 4 meter range instead of 6 meters, but just put on a worse base. Why is the base type so good?
What if they put Bastion only available to Sentinel?
I again disagree with that. I like that it gives access to block for other classes. I just think if it gives you 100% block, it should be like 30% damage reduction maximum from blocking. It should just cap your effectiveness.
Deal. Yeah, that'd be a great item.
And then you can decide, do I want really good block? Do I want to use Core of the Mountain and get really good block and heavily invest in it and get rewarded for that? Or do I want the easy block?
We've been talking about Core of the Mountain recently, and like, okay, first of all, I don't really care because Bastion exists, but you pretend like it doesn't. A Core of the Mountain with like block chance on it, or block chance and endurance, both of them, 2 LP, a 2 LP Core of the Mountain, or Face of the Mountain, whatever the shield's called, is absurd, and it's really fun to build around, and it makes your gear feel impactful every single time you have an upgrade. And one of the things that I like most about it is it makes you reevaluate how you would be building your character otherwise. And like that makes me so happy. I like talking about Fractured Crown builds, because if you've never played a Fractured Crown build, all of a sudden you take all the HP off your gear and you start building mana and you start building endurance threshold and tier 7 endurance threshold, and it makes you reevaluate all those drops that you've been skipping for the past couple weeks. I'm like, man, I really wish I would have picked up that tier 7 endurance threshold gold ring, you know, that I saw a couple days ago, because I didn't know they're so valuable now. And like having exalted endurance on your gear, maybe getting some block chance or sealed tier 2 block chance on your ring, that's awesome. That totally makes you change how you're evaluating affixes. And it kind of gently shakes up the meta for like, hybrid health goes here, your block chance goes here, your crit avoid goes here. It makes you reevaluate where those affixes go. And it makes gearing more interesting. Like that shield, the mountain shield, should be a premier item. And it's just not.
And things like this make like, so that kind of thinking makes me think that we're getting way too much power. Again, like to come back on topic that we were talking about for the skill, the skill power that is giving us, for example, the 10% base crit and the dodge and everything on Sprint Strike, and so I think we're getting too much power from the skills alone. The skills alone should like act on the more on the mechanic of the skills and how you're trying to play it, and then the gear should give you access to those stats or those like you should have more power from your gear, and you should not be able to clear the game with like being naked and like level 1 weapon, for example, or just like having like an end game weapon and like nothing else, and you're clearing the entire game, right?
Flintler, you told me once upon a time about Avalanche. Can you reiterate that argument for me?
Its skill tree is exactly how I want skill trees to be, but in the current status of the game, it sucks. It has very low access to multiplicative damage, and most of the skill tree is mechanical changes. I think that's wonderful. I think maybe if skills had some form of baseline increases with level or how many points you put into them, that would also make plus levels to the skill affixes stronger, and less numeric multipliers in the tree, more mechanical changes, and then you dump all the extra power into gear, that all skills would benefit from that. Just from the whole feel of what am I going to do with the skill? What's the identity of the skill tree and how I'm using it for this build? I think that would be an overall benefit for the game.
So
gear needs to feel like very much more powerful than it does right now. Like certain builds, getting certain key pieces of gear will feel great, and scaling it does feel great. For example, on like I said, on the ballista, getting more dexterity always feels good. But I completely agree with you that skill trees should be more of like mechanical changes, or like how to play the build, how to play the skill, rather than, oh, here, grab all the more multipliers, then you have 5 points that you can do. Like, okay, if you want to do this, go here, but those are like the 15 mandatory points are already selected for you because it's all more multipliers. So you don't have the option to play anything else. If you do, then you're missing out on so much more damage, and like, for example, like clear speed and like feeling good. Yeah, that should all be on gear.
Let me segue to a new topic here. How do you feel with patch 0.9, the introduction of a slew of new items and updated unique items that now have more multipliers on them? Have you used any of them in your builds? Did you participate in my contest that we just finished holding today about Firestarter's Torch? What have you done with the new more multipliers that are access?
I haven't done anything with those.
Nothing. Got it. All right, Flintler.
Not yet.
Sure.
Not yet.
I think they're great. I think they're fantastic, and they in general have opportunity cost, which is actually excellent. So I happened to find my first Oshirion ever after 0.9. So I got to say, okay, any spell build, do I want 10% more damage on it at the cost of defenses? That only has mana, chilled, and shock on it, right? And then 10% more damage, which is great. You can tack it on if your build can handle it. I think that's wonderful. I've been using Throne of Ambition here and there with the new cold damage multipliers. Again, for Avalanche, for whatever. I've been doing stupid primeless stuff.
I
think they're great. Fantastic.
So a year ago, I would have said that if you could just randomly select whatever damage type your skill does, you would select Lightning, because Lightning has like basically +1 blessing, because the opportunity cost for getting the Lightning Shred blessing is very, very low. So you just get +1 blessing. And you also get shock, which is great because it's like another form of shred on top of the shred that you already have. And these days, like, lightning damage is still good. Mage, for example, has a lot of synergies and the lightning skill, critical strike multipliers, and affix on your body armor. But these days, like, fire damage is looking great for a variety of reasons. Like Throne of Ambition giving more damage now. Like the defense probably went down for the average build, but the more damage, pretty good. And then it also gives you like Firestarter's Torch, if you can figure out a way to work that into your build. For flat damage, you might end up using a Immolator's Ablation belt for like a spell character. There's like the Osirian Ring, which is generic more damage. You can use the what is the idol called, or the relic called? Soulfire. It has like a 10% more fire damage against ignited enemies. Like all of these things really make me feel good about trying to make less good builds work. I've had multiple people over the past week or so. So we ran a contest with Firestarter's Torch. People are trying to make Fire Aura deal damage. I could not be happier. It's like Fire Aura is like the classic skill that new players love, and it just doesn't have as many more multipliers as you wish it did because it doesn't have a skill tree. But if you really work for it, you can use this item and this item and this item and this item, and they all give you a little bit more damage. And I love it. Totally love it.
I'm gonna put a quick sting in there to say, please make Herkir's Vessel stack. The flat damage on potion needs to stack.
Everything stacks. Why does that thing not stack? It's wild to me. All right, Bina, what's on your mind?
So I was gonna say, but then Perry, if you would use a spreadsheet, you would know that 10% is not enough to be meaningful, because what is 8% more damage? It's only the 6 skill points, the passive points that you're missing in your basic Primalist tree.
But those are all unique items, and you can get LP on them. It's so, and then like I was like, oh, can't wait to go grind up some more LP garbage level 1 unique items. That's exciting. I love that.
Yeah,
that's exactly the kind of thing that I want.
Such a high legendary potential level, so that the chances of you getting it with like more than 1 LP is so minimal.
What item are you talking about?
I mean,
well, Throne has a pretty high LP, right?
Any item in particular.
Throne of Ambition is like 200, doesn't it?
Sharon, what's the LP level on this?
Yeah, I think
it's 74.
Not feasible. Okay. It's too high of a rarity tier.
Oh, yeah, it's super rare. I don't even have one of those rings yet.
Yeah, but at 74, you can get like 2 LP if you're really, really lucky. Maybe 3.
If it ever drops, yeah.
Yeah, it just becomes super lucky. I mean, I give that advice all the time. Just as long as you can fit that into your build, just have more luck stat, sure.
But yeah, I think maybe the values are a bit too low for them to be like really, really worth it. Like it's gonna give you a little bit more damage, but
like 10% more is not insane. But it's a nice little boost.
It's not insane. It's not insane.
It really makes me want to do more experiments with like 2 and 3 LP items. Like that's what I like about it.
I think they're doing it in the right way though. Like you mentioned Soulfire. If I'm playing Ignite, this also gives me spell damage. Or if I'm playing something fire damage, right? This also gives me this. And it also gives me the armor bonus if I'm ignited. That has combos with Immolator's Ablation. And you look at the ring, Oshiran, you think, okay, well, maybe I can drop Chill Chance off my weapon if I use this and get the damage from it. And then I can put Armor Shred or, there's... I think they're doing them in the right way. That maybe the values are a little low, but if they put kind of multiple things on it aside from just that to make you think, if I wanted to use this for this, I get this bonus as well. If I want to use this item for purpose A, I also get B alongside it.
All right. So if you're going to take one of the items that didn't get updated and slap a more multiplier on it, or like a less damage taken or more damage dealt, what item out there do you want to see with like a little bit more damage on it? Don't say Hazelroot. Say something else.
Ballista Bow.
Okay.
No.
Stormcarved Testament.
I'd have to think. It's I don't have any one item in mind right now. I think most of them could use, for example, a small. I mean, we want to get more impact from gear, and so I think almost all of them should have a certain way to scale something better than something else. For example, all uniques must have a unique interaction with something, or like a more multiplier for this, a less damage taken for that, a special like a multiplier for maybe your endurance threshold, or maybe a multiplier for like weird things, that will make you really rethink about how you can use this in a very particular way. And I think that would be interesting, because I don't. So again, I don't think the meta. So we have currently kind of like a meta in the game, but and meta builds and stuff like that, and we know what is good and what is bad. But I don't think the game is solved. I think many builds are yet to be discovered and I think people should really try to not really. So you make build guides, I make build guides, a lot of people make build guides, but figuring out things on your own and trying to go with your own idea sometimes is the better way, because you'll discover something that will be just like insanely good, and like kind of like break through the meta pretty much. So yeah.
I want to come back to what you said about how unique should have something unique about them instead of just stats. So the perfect example that I would like to change would be Bone Clamor Barbute, right? This item that has a little, like a good amount of armor and then some ward, but it's got like nothing, right? There's nothing unique about it. And then
That
you look
was a
at,
popular helmet like 3-4 years ago, back when Exsanguinus had text.
but you look at something like Decayed Skull, 10% more armor. Now that's cool, right? So
Yeah.
there's a perfect dichotomy of unique that it's not really doing much for your build.
When the LP system was first introduced to the game, I thought that Decayed Skull was going to be like the sleeper pick. Like, this item has relevant text on it. It's got a more armor multiplier. It's got some void damage in case you're playing a VK. And like VKs always need a little bit of extra, defense into them. I'm surprised that Decayed Skull isn't a more popular item. Like,
it's level 65 LP.
Because it's garbage. That's why. But like, it's cool. Like, that should be an item that people are more excited about finding LP on. But like, I guess it's not really something that I see with LP very often.
And like, for example, the 10% more armor, we're already getting like, we're not getting that much more that much increased armor from other sources. We're getting some, right? But for example, if you have 3,000 armor, how much does 300 more armor gives you?
You're hitting
And with
DR,
the armor
diminishing
formula
returns,
as well, the more you get, the less it's worth. It's numbers too low. I think the numbers too low.
If someone wants something to think about, Decayed Skull, and then go back to the old Kolnavar's Spriggan form, getting ward off of armor, but figure out how to make it work with the new cooldown reduction affixes.
I mean, you can play that build right now. It's clunky, and it's kind of been clunked out of the meta. But for a minute there, it was completely insane. So yeah, why not make it more insane? Sure.
I think one really cool, unique is Foot of the Mountain. Getting like transforming your dodge rating to endurance threshold. It's a really cool interaction.
Have you used that on any builds? I've used it one time.
No, but look forward to it.
So I think you got to figure out where you're getting your dodge from, right? Because like building flat dodge on your gear is not something you want to do for that. You want to convert incidental dodge that you just happen to get from some skill like Serpent Strike. The thing that I was doing is I was playing a crit spell damage thorn something. I call it Spirit Fingers. What's Spirit Fingers called?
Spirit Thorns.
Spirit Thorns, right. It's whatever. It's like the default skill that you get when you transform into a Spriggan as a druid. And using that, having tons of cast speed, you also happen to generate a couple of Maelstrom stacks, and then Maelstrom gives you dodge per stack. And then if you have like 1% dodge rating somewhere in your gear, all of a sudden you're scaling all that flat dodge to percent dodge. And then when you stand still, you have 4,000 endurance threshold. And that's awesome. Like, I wish there was a different way to get flat dodge instead of just, this one skill that scales with cast speed and you're building cast speed anyways. But Foot of the Mountain is a cool item. I wonder, I don't think this is kind of the skill that Bina is looking for, but there is some more endurance threshold. I'm pretty sure that's the wording on it on Smelter's Wrath. So all we got to get is like, maybe Smelter's Wrath and standing still is the next skill. You get a Perma Rebuke. Oh my God, you're going to love it. Perma Rebuke alternating with Smelter's Wrath. That's Bina's next build right there. You're going to, so good.
3,000 arena waves. Takes 8 hours.
How could you die?
I can't out how to deal damage now.
So speaking of armor and like gearing becoming more important and like your skills become less important, there was a change recently in 0.9 with Sentinel. So I don't know how much Sentinel both of you play. I know you play a lot of Primalist. Do you play a lot of Sentinel, Bina?
I've played a bit of Sentinel back like maybe a year or two ago.
Okay.
Back when Vengeance was actually good and like Block was even better, and what's it called? I think Abyssal Echoes had that node to suck up mobs, and then you would just like basically spam Vengeance and like attract all mobs towards you, and it would just be like really really OP. But yeah, I've played a little bit of Sentinel. I started recently a Hammerden. I want to get. So I've actually never played a Hammerden before, but I mean, I've seen it played so many times. I know it's good. I know I just didn't have the feel for it. But yeah, I want to get to play more of all the classes because I used to play basically one build and push it to the max, or like actually try to push it to the max. So I tend to play my builds for a long, long time, and that's something I want to kind of like move a bit from for the time being when there's no ladder, so I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything, right?
As soon as the ladder comes back, you can go back to just playing one build for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
So the reason that I bring up Sentinel here is there's a change in 0.9 where like Sigils of Hope, and I guess Javelin as well, if you're using it this way, but Sigils of Hope very notably lost the flat armor that it used to have, and it gave you 200 flat armor per sigil, and then you'd often had 4 sigils on it. So it gave you 800 flat armor that you just didn't have if you weren't using sigils, which was an astronomical amount of flat armor. It's like more than a body armor gives you. So that's been nerfed. It's no longer there. And like I just put out a video about this recently, kind of discussing it, but they've replaced it with endurance threshold instead. And like endurance threshold is a stat that like technically gives you EHP. It's technically value against damage over time, but it's like the armor's gone. And very notably, it's kind of on some of your base types if you want to opt into it. So I think right now, the best chess piece that a Sentinel has access to is the one with no text on it. Doesn't give you damage, doesn't give you endurance, doesn't give you anything. It just has 550 flat armor, which is huge for a body armor. And I kind of like that change. I like that you can opt into the armor if you want to. I like that Sigils of Hope is no longer this mandatory thing that's just way too good, both offensively and defensively. I like it. I think shifting the armor onto your gear is a really good choice there.
I think that's great, but I also think you're undervaluing how much the crit avoidance moving to mage
oh, that's hilarious.
That decision.
Yeah, where do you get crit avoidance from?
So if you could still get crit avoidance on gear with less armor, you would take the suffix flexibility. 100%.
Wait, I have something for you. Ready? The Rive character that I'm playing right now, I've min-maxed it. I don't have a spreadsheet, but my brain is huge. So we don't build crit avoid. You just get crit. But instead, we use Fiery Dragon Boots. Yeah. Reduced bonus damage taken from critical strikes. And then on your weapon, you have a sealed tier 1 modifier for reduced bonus damage. And then it's like your crit avoid capped, but you don't have to build it. Ooh, it's so good. I love it.
Petition yet again to change crit avoidance to reduce bonus damage from crits.
Or just have more access to reduce bonus damage taken from crits. I love that stat. It's so good.
You know, I love that way of thinking about building, like making your build like you're trying to achieve something. You're trying to achieve capping crit avoid, and you're using another method to like basically come like using something else to come to the same goal. I really love that idea. Yeah.
That's why I brought up the tangential, but that's why I brought up the armor on Spriggan armor to ward. I was statting out just for fun, just theory crafting, just what is something stupid I could do. Low health druid, building no health anywhere and just building pure armor everywhere, because Primalist gets the prefix for shared armor for you and your minions, and you get put flat and percent armor on everything. You convert that all to EHP to ward, which still takes effect. The armor still reduces the damage you take for the ward. I was thinking, what can be done with this? But then you need to figure out ward retention.
Oh my god! Then you could take sky armor. You could have the flat armor node from Shaman. Whoo! Look at this. We figured it out.
Oh my god.
I'm just so happy I know the name of that node. That puts a smile on my face.
So I'm very in for having additional ways, alternate ways of scaling your defenses. How can I get EHP in a different way? How can I get crit avoidance in a different way? Those kind of things are wonderful for a theory crafter.
All right, I've got one more topic that I want to bring up tonight, and then we'll see what happens after that. Bian, is there anything on your mind right now?
No, not really.
All right, so I think both of you have played this game a bit longer than I have, and you played, I think, back when protections were a thing. Bina, were you there as well?
Yep.
So Flintler was just making a point about wanting different ways to scale your damage or scale your defenses. Instead of just building health everywhere, you could build armor everywhere and convert armor into ward, and then armor protects ward, and you could like flip flop between forms and generate that ward again. And that's a pretty cool idea. I don't mind it. What was it like for you two as people who like experimental builds back when protections were a thing? So as you think about your answer, I'm going to give a brief explanation of what protections were. So protections were a thing that existed in last Epoch before resistances, and they were effectively EHP. They were effective HP for one specific element. So a potential way that you could build the defenses on your character, instead of building health, you could just build, 2,000 fire protections, 2,000 cold protections, 2,000 fizz protections, 2,000 whatever protections. And that was a way of having a good tanky character, even if you had 500 health, like actual red HP. So for you two, when protections existed, was that a better gearing puzzle to solve out? Was that more options? Was that less options? How was that for you?
I haven't played it too when protections were a thing. I was pretty new to LE, so I didn't play too much with it. I remember back in the days we used to convert a lot more of the damage taken to something else. For example, with Orion's Eye, you would gamble for Orion's Eye on it, like if you're playing something like a mage, for example. You would just go to the gambler and then gamble for maybe like 15-20 minutes, and then you get your Orion's Eye, and then you're good to go,
15,
right?
20, that's pretty good RNG, but keep going.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was a very different game in terms of like well, it was a very different game, all in all, but specifically also with protections. Um, I don't like personally. This is very subjective, but I don't hate the change to resistances. Um, it was different gearing back then, and you would like I said, you would maybe get like a 0 res of something, or like 0 protection of some certain elements, and then convert them, and then you just stack that protection like to the sky basically. I also have some spreadsheets about that, but that's for another time.
All right, Flintler, how about you? When you were making builds back in the day, tell me.
I loved it. Protections were by far my favorite. I loved that it was different than other games. I think EHG has done a good job with the way they implemented resistances with the enemy penetrations to make it less punishing in general. But I loved protections. Absolutely. I thought it. The one thing that was bad was that building health was strictly worse. Even if you could get the same EHP, it meant your recovery was worse. If you have low health
that's a great point.
and high effective health, then recovery is extremely strong. If you have high health for the same effective health, then your recovery is just weaker. That was the one main problem. But the idea of you can build a ward character, and if you get 20,000 ward, it's the same as a health character with 1,000 health and 9,000 protections, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think my numbers were wrong, but right, you get the EHP one place or another, and it doesn't make any difference outside of the problem with health and recovery. I think that was excellent. You had mages who say, "Well, I could do protections, or I could gear completely differently." At the time, set affixes were a thing. So if you were going protections, you had to hard commit to protections. You'd want set necrotic and void protections on 4 pieces, and you'd want set elemental protections on 4 pieces.
Remember
and
back in the day, like you
glancing
like
blow
set glancing
on
blows,
on 3 pieces, right? And so you had to do these things and commit to them. It meant swapping out your gear was extremely difficult. There were problems. Balancing was there's reasons they did what they did, but I absolutely loved the fact that different classes had the incentive to build different gear. At the time, there was not class specific chests and helm, and you could not simply swap a chest you built for your mage onto a chest you built for your primalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they would want to gear differently. And I think that was a very strong part of the protection system, was the incentive for different classes to gear differently. We still have that with Broken Crown, right? And things like that.
Ashen Crown, Prismatic or Prism Wraps, Orion's Eye, converting your damage, less physical, less element. Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Bina.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy to realize how much the game has changed since then. Like, we've come a long way. We've come a really, really long way.
What a great note to go out on. So as we wrap up, we're a bit over the 1 hour mark here. But Flintler and Bina, is there anything else on your mind? Maybe a last thought you want to toss out there?
Give us more.
Give us more.
give us more to play with. EHG.
Keep it up,
Love
EHG,
it.
and put more power to gear, please. More,
And then
more
Bina,
power to gear.
Bina, if there's
Yeah.
people out there who like what you're saying and they want to see more of your content, where are they looking for you?
Mainly on Twitch, twitch.tv/Binashole, and on YouTube as well. I try to put out build guides over there and like some content on YouTube as well.
And then Flintler, if people like yelling at clouds, where can they find you these days?
Just Twitch. Flintler is the tag.
I even looked for you on YouTube and I could not find you. There's an old.
I do have a YouTube.
There was a very old Flame Read video that I was trying to pull up for historic purposes, but I could not find it on YouTube.
I can
So
link it to you, but
just
it's not
Twitch.
under the same name.
Oh, Perry, I have one for you. In
Oh.
response to your Shaman is bad video, Shaman actually meta. Look forward to it.
Is Shaman
One
meta?
build. 2 builds, maybe 3 builds. That's it. Stop! Don't listen to him, EHG.
I can't wait.
for the leaderboards. Leaderboards, rank 1, Shaman.
Rank 1 Shaman, and it'll just be one build that's technically okay. I look forward to it. It's the kind of thing that I want to see. So in any case, that is it for the podcast. Both Flintler and Bina, thank you so much for joining us here. We will have a normal crew of people. So I know Dread is currently over in the world of Path of Exile, but he'll be joining us back in the world of Last Epoch when he's done doing whatever the hell he's doing over there. So for all of us here at Epic Epoch, thank you for being here both live on Twitch, on YouTube, and on Spotify. We'll see you next time.